This is NDTV, and you're watching NDTV Profit.
Welcome back. You're watching All About Ads on NDTV Profit. Now, we've been talking about the rupee almost every day, sometimes going up, sometimes going down. But there's good news too in India. The monsoons have been great, 20 to 30% above average. And this is likely to impact rural India and purchasing power in those markets. Let's take a look now at the economic pyramid. Top 48 cities constitute 25% of purchasing power. 7,800 small towns constitute 25% of purchasing power. And followed by the biggest market, 50% of purchasing power from rural areas, which constitute 6,40,000 villages. And to give us more insight on the forthcoming festival season in terms of rural markets is none other than Pradeep Kashyap. He's of course known as the father of rural marketing, but he's the founder of MART and president of Rural Marketing Association of India. Also joining us from Dabur, the executive director of sales, George Angelo. Thank you both gentlemen for joining us on All About Ads. Dabur claims that they are expecting a higher contribution from rural markets this year. What kind of contribution are you expecting first of all, and what makes it so significant this year, looking forward to the festival season?
At Dabur, we get almost about 50% of our business from the rural markets. So traditionally, rural has been a significant piece of our growth plans. When we looked at this entire canvas and the opportunities emerging out of the rural markets, we have seen that the rural markets are growing at a much faster pace, driven by growing affordability, greater propensity of people in terms of adapting to branded goods, increasing awareness of media, and also your ability to reach your products in the rural hinterland. So we said our strategy has to be centered around consistently being present in the rural markets. Now, when we looked at this canvas a couple of years back, we discovered the canvas is a 6,40,000 villages canvas. But however, when you cut it down, just about 9% of these villages contribute 38% to the population, and 42% of the urban rural wealth actually came from these markets. So we said we should just focus our energies around these markets, which broadly were in about 10 states of the country that was contributing almost 70% plus of FMCG market. So we adapted a strategy where we said in these markets we will need to double our reach from what is existing at the exit of 2011. So this was a 2-year journey for us, where we actually prioritize these markets at a district level. There is a affluent rural and there is still parts of rural which are stuck in the dark ages. So we said we should just focus on the affluent part of the rural, construct an organization structure and a distribution network which will feed these markets in a very focused manner.
Mr. Kashyap, let me get you here. We have had this conversation even during the 2008-2009 downturn, where the only glimmer of hope was coming from rural markets. And once again, we are facing a scenario where we are expecting more growth from rural markets. Looking forward to this particular festival season, what kind of growth are you seeing, purchasing power, in terms of sales?
What we find is that the monsoon has been 107% of the average over the last 20 years. And it's the highest monsoon that we've had from 1994 this year. So obviously, the rice crop is going to be a bumper crop. More importantly, because there's been good rainfall, people haven't had to run their diesel pumps. So they've saved a lot of money on diesel, and we know what are the prices of diesel today. So if the farmers do well, then the mood becomes buoyant. Unlike corporate India, which is so gloomy at this point in time. Rural India is really rejoicing, and we can look forward to a very good season, particularly the durable companies, the high-ticket item companies. We're already seeing signs of that.
These are numbers coming from the Commission for Agricultural Costs and Prices, CACP, shows a 5% increase in agricultural growth in 2013-14, and this is likely to translate into a 15 to 20% rise in nominal rural incomes. And this, however, does not include income of agricultural laborers.
And if you add to that the increase in the daily wages of agricultural labor because of Narega, see, Narega has not added much to the income per se, but Narega has re-benchmarked the daily wages, which have gone up by 20%. So because of this factor which you just mentioned, the wages, the incomes will go up by 15 to 20%,
Right.
as also the wage labor incomes will go up by 15-20%. So rural incomes per se across the board will go up by 15-20%, which is a huge gain.
And if you to split this into categories, food products are up. Currently, 48 to 49% of household expenditure goes to food items, and there's likely to be an increase. FMCG is up. Currently, around 50% of FMCG sales are accounted for by rural markets. Two-wheelers are up, 40% plus coming from rural areas. Telecom and mobile handset players, 60% sales from rural, up to 400 million. And consumer durables, over 50%. These are huge numbers, but there's a lot of effort and time that needs to be put into your sales and distribution in these areas. You cannot go into it one fine year and decide that this is a market that works for you.
That's where I think Dabur has done exceedingly well. They embarked on this plan 3 years back, and today they are reaping the benefits of it because they have doubled their reach, whereas a new company which starts today will take another 2 years to get there, whereas you need to capture this season. You need to have your acquisition strategy for consumers, for which the BTL and other activities have to be in place, and then also retention, for which you need to build trust. So you need to invest in this whole ecosystem, much ahead in time. And this is going to be that year. You look at tractors, Mahindras, Escorts, John Deere, all these companies have been investing there. Last year, the total sale of tractors was 550,000, 5.5 lakhs. This year, in the first 4 months, the numbers are already 2.35 lakhs. There's definitely a 20% increase in tractor sales. And tractor is a benchmark for the rural economy because that's a high-ticket item. Unlike shampoo or soap, you can buy more or less. It doesn't alter the budget of the family so much. But to invest 5-6 lakhs, because don't forget that the tractor is perhaps the most expensive item the farmer is ever going to buy in his life.
Let's focus a little bit specifically on advertising and marketing initiatives in rural area. And let me start with you, because there is a sense of credibility that you need to build with rural consumers for them to take you seriously even.
So we have two challenges as organizations. The first challenge, and that is what I spoke about earlier, is about getting your brands available on a consistent basis. Create a sustainable model for making your brands available. But just reaching your brands is not good enough because you need to engage with the consumer and convert him from whatever surrogate use of the category that he's using today into a branded good. So today possibly his income levels were enabling him to afford only necessities. Today you have seen how the economy is booming in the rural and greater disposable income. He is moving into higher value products, branded goods and lifestyle products.
You are seeing an affinity towards branded goods.
We are seeing it dramatically happening in the categories that we operate in, be it in shampoos, be it in toothpaste, hair oils. But then the question is about communicating to the consumer. Mass media is our first option, television. But then you must appreciate that even mass media in a rural context possibly hits about 40% of the population. But if you take a state like Bihar, maybe it's only 11%. So you will have to find out solutions. Or maybe if you're talking about radio, maybe in one state it hits 40%. In the neighboring state it's only 3%. So you have to pick and choose the mass media from that context. We prioritize DD considering the footprint that we have as far as rural is concerned. But we also see that there are opportunities in the regional media in terms of engaging with the consumer at that platform.
Are regional players becoming more important than overall national mass media?
Depends on the context of the brand really. If there is a cultural nuance which seems to be interesting for the brand to piggyback on, then the regional media is relevant.
For you, how relevant is that?
We would say, I'll give an example. Let us say, for example, when we were talking to the South audience on Dabur Amla, we discovered that what is valued in South is about blackness of hair.
Whereas
the communication was very different from the larger context of the Hindi belt. So the moment we have understood this insight and start to talk about the ingredient to the consumer, you had to communicate in that language, and your insight of black hair being the communication customized to South, you see an enormous change in the trajectory of growth. If you talk about rural markets, the one thing is about establishing the credibility for your brand. The one place where we see a big opportunity on this is the weekly heart markets, which are present and prevalent in a lot of large states of the country. You are able to, first of all, make your brand available there. Secondly, also get rid of all the spurious and lookalikes which actually dominate some of these low-income markets. Melas are always timed with festivals and harvesting seasons. First of all, there's a greater propensity to spend. And interestingly, for FMCG players, it is also an occasion to connect with the rural women folk. They have a social sanction to move around in a setting and explore the opportunities out there. We conduct beauty pageants for Dabur Amla, reaching into absolute hinterland, operating a beauty pageant at a village level.
Clearly, it's working for Dabur, which claims 50% of its sales coming from rural India, right? If it's that big a market, what is stopping other categories and other products from actually making inroads into what should be now?
I think every company is now getting there. The question is, how do I do it? How do I reach there? How do I set up my supply chain? And that's where I think Project Shakti of Unilever and ITC, Chopal. You see, the best thing about this country, which people don't realize, is that our physical infrastructure is very poor. But we have the best social infrastructure in the world. We have a health ASHA worker for every village of India. We have self-help groups. We have Anganwadi workers, 150,000 post offices. Companies have to use the existing social infrastructure for creating that last mile.
Rural people actually respect the advice of elders or the educated. If you're able to leverage these people, the influencers of the decision making, the people who guide the decision making, they can play an enormous role in building our brands. For example, we work through the Anganwadi workers or the primary health center doctors or the midwives for developing the sales of our brand called Dabur Lal Tel, where we connect with 100,000 women using these people as the brand ambassadors to engage with the consumer finally and build credibility. And you will start actually seeing this play out in one brand which is predominant in a village. Whereas in the same socio-cultural region, you would see different brands in other villages. And the footprint of the mass media or the consumer engagement is very similar. So it's about the role of these influencers in those villages, which seem to really play out big.
We've spoken about the economic pyramid, 640,000 villages, which have 50% of purchasing power. However, it is often perceived that technology has evaded the rural areas, which is actually not a fact. I mean, mobile players would not be increasing their numbers to 400 million if it was. How far digital and what kind of digital penetration has happened?
If you look at mobile phones, 400 million, the total number of families in rural India is less than 200 million. So that means you have 2 phones per family on an average. There are some very poor families who still may not be having a phone and some other families having 3 or 4 phones. But I think almost every family by now will have at least one mobile phone. And they have jumped the internet age and they've gone straight to the mobile phone. So they're doing all their transactions on the mobile. And the amount of data transfer that's happening in rural India per phone is higher than the data transfer in urban India. In every village, you have the grocery store who can download a film for you for $10. Digital has already reached rural India. The youth of rural India are as savvy with technology as urban youth, certainly more savvy than me. And therefore, this is a myth to feel that rural people are not educated, they're afraid of technology.
The biggest challenge for us were some 2,000 people across the country in back of beyond. How do you control these people? I think the technology landscape has dramatically changed over the last few years. One, there is an affordability of the hardware. The second, in terms of the adaptability of the software and the applications which are today available, it has really grown. So we are able to actually connect with every single individual and understand exactly what they're doing because of the last mile connectivity. It takes me just a few seconds to configure a message and my system immediately populates down to every single person over there. We have given our people now tablets who go out into the market. So tomorrow I have a new TV commercial which is being released. I can just populate it down to his tablet in an instant and he can play it to the retailer over there, showcasing him what is the support Dabur is giving for this brand which is being launched in the marketplace. And that is huge power because it's instant connectivity and upstream and downstream both. And you are intervening in real time. The technology has contributed a great bit in our initiative into the rural markets and really helping us in that way.
You know, if I may just add, there are fascinating example I saw in West Bengal, a chain of 50 low-cost hospitals. They have X-ray machines, but they don't have a radiologist. So these 50 hospitals take X-rays during the day, and in the evening, these are all sent on internet to one radiologist sitting in Lucknow. And he reads all these reports and he sends his findings, by internet, and the next morning they're all this. They've not invested in a radiologist in every hospital to bring down the cost. So they've done hundreds of things through technology to bring down the cost of healthcare to 1/3 or 1/4 of what is the prevalent rate.
Technology is a great enabler.
Yeah. And for rural market, because the whole challenge is always one of reach, physical reach. Now that you have internet connectivity and technology, you can reach all these places at the press of a button.
It has also changed the way of working, because companies traditionally used to operate that the frontline guy has to gather data and push it to the system at the back. Today, with technology and transaction systems being available, the company head office possibly has more data, and it can actually guide the actions of the people on the ground by providing him actionable data. And that's a big change in terms of the mindset and the way of working in sales, which I see in the line.
One last thing. Looking forward to the festival season, what are your great expectations from the rural markets this year?
Well, I think this is going to be one of the best years in the last decade. Durable companies will have the best sale coming out of rural India this year. Two-wheelers, tractor companies, of course. FMCGs traditionally these are things that are consumed regularly, so therefore there may be some upgrades, fine. But it's not going to be a bumper sale. The biggest gain is going to be for durable companies. Within that, number one, televisions. See, once they get their money from the sale of their produce, then there is a hierarchy of purchases. The first is to repay loans. The second is to buy an agricultural equipment, so if they needed to buy a water pump or any other such thing. The third is then their social responsibility. So if there's a wedding to be done or whatever, so you need to keep money aside for that. The next thing is a common product for the family, which is the television.
One last word from you. For this festival season, what are your expectations as a company?
I think it will be an extremely good season for us. Greater disposable income means premiumization of the consumption in a great sense. I think it's a big opportunity for us. We are configuring our activities on the ground in terms of leveraging the trade channel opportunities which exist, the consumer engagement opportunities which are being planned out and getting executed. And traditionally, this quarter is an important quarter for a company like Dabur, with most of our Chyawanprash sales happening
pre-winter season.
All our rural engagement programs are being given a complete makeover and leverage to the current opportunities.
Well, this is a discussion that cannot end here, but unfortunately has to, at least for this show. We do expect great activity in rural India this festival season. On that note, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Well, that's it on the show. We'd love to hear what you have to say about advertising and marketing in rural markets in India. Write to us at aaa@ndtv.com, or you can share your comments also on social media with us on our Facebook page. From the entire team, thank you very much for watching. Enjoy this international commercial, and of course, we'll see you again next week.
You've either got it or not. You're either chillin' or hot. You got a flash that panache, or you'll never cash those chips or kiss those ruby lips. You better show what you got, 'cause baby, you've either got it or not.